Hi all, we're going to have a look now at my recent win last night against I.Khandaker, playing for Barnet against Watford 2 Chess Club in the Hearts Division 1 League. So I was white, I chose c4, I.Khandaker played knight f6, and after knight c3 he played e6. Apparently after the game he told me he hadn't actually intended this against this c4 knight c3, he had actually wanted to play e5, so it was a bit of a slip at this very early stage, because after e4 he wasn't quite sure what to do here, and maybe, you know, best is just losing a tempo with just e5 here, or d6. He played bishop b4, and we have a kind of opening disaster already, because I just play e5 now with, I think, you know, a very good position. Because he doesn't really want to give up this dark squared bishop. He played knight g8, and now it kind of reminds me of a French defence type position where in the winner white can play queen g4. I thought, why not queen g4? It seems quite logical. And to defend that g7 pawn, he could have played g6, but it does weaken the dark squares, and maybe, you know, I can continue with h4 with a very nice position. Maybe g6 is best. What he played was a very, you know, backward development, bishop f8. But if he can keep a very solid position, this might be justified. There have been some games, for example, of Tony Moles in the past, where he had his pieces almost on the back row, because he was then watching what his opponent would do. So it sort of keeps flexibility to sort of look at your opponent's position and then optimise your own in the best possible way. But here it is pretty dodgy, because white has a big lead in development. After d4, d6, I just played bishop g5, because after knight e7, I thought this is a very comfortable move, just the castle queenside. So I was extremely pleased with my position out of the opening so far. He plays h6, and he's providing some targets now if he does play g5 later. But also I noticed a nice little tactical idea, that I could allow him to provoke to play g5 with a potential risk of trapping my bishop if he gets in h5 and h4. However, I saw a little cunning intermediate move here, which is knight e4. So I'm threatening now to play knight f6 mate, believe it or not. So he has to do something about that, and in doing that, bishop g7, he's created this pin now on the bishop. So it gives me a chance to undermine this g5, to put it under great fire by playing f4. So I was really pleased now with my position at the opening. He plays d5, which releases the pressure on the e5, so this is a nice central wedge. So I just play knight c3, and now he plays knight f5. So I simply retreat this bishop to f2, content with, you know, a nice advantage, and potential just with a very easy plan now of h4 to further pressure that g5 pawn. So he plays c6, trying to hold up the centre, and I play knight f3. He further weakens his dark squares with a6. Now finally I just play h4, and so I'm just very simple plan, just to weaken his kingside more. There's only one slight concern on this diagonal, if he ever got a bishop on this diagonal and skewing my queen, but it never really was a threat in the game, because I've always got things like knight g5. So I just casually play just bishop d3, trying to just get rid of his best piece and also fracture his pawns more. So he retreats that, and I play knight g5, sort of virtually pinning his knight on h6. So he's got a very difficult time to just get castled somewhere. He plays queen e7, and I notice this target on h5, and I don't really want him to play knight g4, because it might be quite good there. So I take the opportunity to play bishop e2, and after knight f5 I play g4, so I'm increasing the pressure on the king side with very easy pawn moves, pawn breaks. After knight h6, now here I blunder. I thought I was going to exploit this pin on this diagonal, but it really doesn't work. And what I end up doing potentially is giving my opponent a nice square on c6 for his knight. So I play c takes, and after c takes, I can't play what I originally thought knight takes d5. Let's have a quick look though. Knight takes d5, just e takes d, bishop takes, and he's got queen c7 check. So that would have ruined my winning position and leave me with a lost position very quickly. Thankfully I spotted that and just played bishop h3. But a bit gutted, I've now given his knight a great square on c6. I think he was concerned about knight a4 though, at knight b6 if he played knight c6 immediately. So he played bishop d7. Here I played rook hg1. Still content I've got a little bit of pressure. But I'm not actually threatening knight e6 here because fe, and he'll be protecting that bishop. Actually Rybka thinks queen f8 here is a good move. And that white's got a big advantage. But he played a terrible blunder now. He played rook g8. And can you see my next move? So this is a bit like my game earlier in the season against Steve Swanson, where I played a pesky knight move. So there's a clue. I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I played knight h7. And there's immediate threats now. Rook takes g7 and queen takes h6. As well as the ominous knight f6 in some variations. So he's actually losing material. There's no easy way of defending this. He plays knight c6, and I just take on g7. And after takes, queen takes h6 would have been okay, but this is even stronger. Knight f6, check. Keeping his king in the centre. And after king d8, queen takes h6. So his rook really hasn't got many squares at all. So he plays rook g6, virtually forced, and after queen h8 check, he can't move his king to c7, so queen takes a8. So he plays bishop e8. And now I simply play h5, further harassing that rook. And after rook g5, I just play bishop h4, and I'm threatening all sorts of nasty things with this skewer on the queen. Here, he actually resigned. So that was a pretty crushing win. My opponent played a blunder in the opening. Let's have a quick overview and summary. I think he should have, after e4, simply played e5 here, losing time, but it may be the best thing to do because black can continue with a dark square strategy plan. It might not have been that bad. In the event, I had a huge lead in development. Now, if black had managed to keep very solid, he might have been able to get away with this. But this h6 and g5 gave me a fixed target on the king side, and I was able to utilise this pin to get my bishop out of danger for being trapped. So, with this target on g5 and this pin important in some variations, I was able to simply add more pressure to the opponent's position with natural moves. So here I just simply played h4, not wanting to just grab material because there's still some dangers on this diagonal, so just h4 seems a logical move. And I was threatening here the ominous g4, so he played this h5, bishop d3 to try and get rid of his best piece, and he's under great fire now, even with that h5 pawn. So my pressure on the king side was increasing here. Here is my arguably first blunder of the game. I played c takes d5, giving him potentially great square for his knight on c6. However, he returned the blunder now with rook g8, played too casually. So after knight h7, it was a crushing final continuation with this knight f6, taking on h6, and this h5 and bishop h4. So I was quite pleased to win this game against I.Khandaker, who earlier in the season I'd drawn with. Please leave any comments on YouTube. Thanks for listening.